Okay, I want to. We have a few points that we have to finish on the Parah Aduma, on the Parah Aduma before we get to hitting the rock. Which we might not get. Probably not going to get there yet today. So the first thing is that we had mentioned yesterday. There's a Sam. I mean, Arya, can you stand up for a second? Thanks. You sit down. I don't need the air conditioning. You got to keep them on their toes, boys. You got to keep them on their toes. What do you call it? So the Gemara in Kiddushin says that there was a non-Jew named Dama ben Nesina. The Gemara says, look how far you have to go to honor your parents. Now, look to what extent you have to go to honor your parents. The Gemara says, we could learn a lesson from a non-Jew in Ashkelon named Dama ben Nesina. This is one of the first stories parents tell their kids because it always involves not waking them up. Hey kids, be quiet. I'm going to tell you a bedtime story. There was once a non-Jew, a goy, who didn't wake up his father. So guys, sit down and be quiet and don't wake me up on Shabbos. So this Dama ben Nesina, the sages needed a stone. There are different versions in Bavli and the Yerushalmi, but it comes out to the same thing. They needed one of the stones for the chest plate. According to some, it was the Yeshve stone, the stone for the tribe of Binyamin. But be that as it may. So they found out that this non-Jew named Dama ben Nesina, he had the stone. So they went to him, and according to their two opinions in the Gemara, how much they offered him. One opinion was 600,000 gold pieces. The other opinion was 800,000 gold pieces. And he went to, his father was sleeping, and he had his head on the key to the safe or whatever it was where he kept the stone. And he said, I'm not going to wake up my father to sell it to you. The next year, he had a red cow born in his flock, a Parah Aduma. So the sages came to him to buy the red flock, and he said to them, I know that any price that I ask you, you'll pay. But I also realized that I was rewarded with this red cow, and therefore I'll only take I'll sell it for the low price of 600,000 gold pieces, which I didn't charge you, which I didn't get last year. That's what the Gemara says. They bought the thing from him. Okay, and we learned from there what the range of kibbud av v'em is, and so on and so forth. The question becomes, why was that? Logically, what should have happened the next year? They should have been missing another stone they should have been missing another stone in the chest plate, in the choshen. Why was it that he got a Parah Aduma? Why did he get a red cow? That became the thing that they had to spend on. So you didn't buy it last year, so buy it the next year. What happened? And his father this time was not sleeping on the cow, right? So they were able to get the cow from him. So what changed? So the commentaries point out, you see, that Dama ben Nesina created what we would call a kitrug, a spiritual prosecution, for lack of a better term, on the Jewish people. Because here you have a non-Jew who's willing to forfeit that kind of profit for the sake of honoring his father. And therefore it becomes a question of, okay, that's what he's willing to do. How far are you guys willing to go? But it's not enough to do what he does. Because honoring your father is perfectly logical. It's not better than logical, it's intuitive. In all societies, there's the concept of honoring the elders, right? And all societies, some societies are very strict. I think in Oriental society, in China or Japan or whatever it is, you don't even lift your eyes to the elder. You don't talk back, and you don't and it's all societies have a concept of elder honoring. That's perfectly logical. What about the flip side? The ultimate in what we call not human logical is the red cow. So you're going to have to go on one better. I'll see you're honoring your parents, and I'll raise you one red cow. Are you willing to spend money also? But you're going to have to do it at a higher level than he does in order to remove that prosecution from the Jewish people to show how devoted you are. That's what the commentaries say. That's why he specifically got a red cow as opposed to as opposed to having the stone the next year. That's what the Mefarshim say. Okay, now. Back to the Parah Aduma, because there are a few points we have to cover here. First of all, when we said that it's mitaher tatzatmeim and mitaher tahorim, that those who are tameh become tahor, those who are impure become pure from it, those who are pure become impure. those who are involved in the process. So the Mefarshim say that this is a message also to all of us. And that is that in each person's approach to Yiddishkeit, what's right for you is not necessarily right for me. And what's right for me is not necessarily what's right for you. That means you have somebody who may be, let's say, very intellectually focused, that he's heavily into the study. And somebody else is trying to do the same thing, but he's more of an energy guy. And he's just going to get frustrated by that amount of those hours that he's going to try to put in. And for this guy, it might be better to do something that he could an outlet for his energy, like being with Hatzalah, right? And you have another guy who's with Hatzalah, who's a high energy guy, and then you have the other guy who says, boy, I'd like to be with Hatzalah, but he can't stand the sight of blood. So that's not going to be good for him or the people that he's trying to save, and so on and so forth. One person has a style of davening. It's even when you're in the same area. One person's style of davening is to close his eyes and really focus and concentrate. Some people concentrate very well with their eyes closed. Other people take a trip when their eyes are closed. Right? They're all over the world, and once in a while they come back at Modim. They return to the davening at Modim. Other people daven out of a sitter. You can't look at what somebody else is doing. What somebody else's approach may not be the right approach for you. You have other people who are very meticulous in their halachic observance. They're stringent. Wherever there's two opinions in halacha, you could be lenient or stringent. They're always stringent. You have another guy who always tries to be stringent, then he has a nervous breakdown. You took on too much too fast, and therefore you could have a situation where something which is objectively a good thing, yet for you it's a good thing, for me it's not a good thing, and vice versa. It could be good for me and it's not good for you. Each person has that, and this is what you need guidance for, to know exactly what your abilities, what your talents are, what your nature is, and then you apply that nature. And I've seen it over and over where people try to force the square into the round hole, and it just doesn't work. You end up frustrated. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Where's the room for genuine inspiration when you see your peers are doing something and that pulls you up, and so you're able to...
Good question. There's something called kina. You know, we're talking about when it comes to jealousy, envy, jealousy. There's only one type of kosher jealousy. Kosher jealousy is where you see somebody else excelling in a certain area, and you say, well, if he could do it, I could do it too, or at least I could try. Now, the first answer to your question is that if he could do it and maximize his potential, then I could also push myself to maximize my potential, not his potential. Number one. Number two, the acid test. See, sometimes people say, wow, if he's learning so many hours, I could also learn so many hours. Now, is that what's called kinas sofrim? Is that a healthy form of jealousy, or is that a jealousy? What's the acid test? The acid test is when you're jealous of somebody, you feel that kind of stabbing pain in the belly. It's like, that's jealousy. If you look at somebody else and you try to be like him and you're feeling a stabbing pain from what he's doing, that's not healthy. If you're energized by it, and that's always the test in Avodas Hashem. I've mentioned this, I think, many times, that how do I know whether or not I should try to be more intense? I'll give you an example. Let's say I want to work on my self-control regarding food. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try to avoid eating desserts. No dessert for me. Right? I'm beyond that already. I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to be like the Vilna Gaon, who ate bread and water. He took his bread, put bread in his mouth, chewed it the minimal amount of times, so that he gets as little pleasure out of this world as possible, and he swallowed it. Right? So I do, I'll tell you the truth, I don't want to disclose my level, but I actually do the same thing with lemon and meringue pie. Right? Especially the fourth piece, right? Come on, honestly, I'm at that level, really on that level. You know, sometimes people sit down at the Shabbos table, lichvod Shabbos Kodesh. Right? You ever heard people do that? Good, you shouldn't be hearing them. There's no reason that you should be hearing. Maybe close that if they're the guys. So there's no reason. One of my favorite stories. I mean, you know me already by now. You could tell. You know I would love this story. One of the gers, the Chedushei Arim, his grandson was sitting at the Shabbos table, and his grandson picked up a piece of food. He said, "Lichvod Shabbos Kodesh," and his grandfather said to him, "You don't have to announce it. It's enough to think it." I love that story because if you can't announce it, nobody's going to know what it's tzaddik yar. Right, so we'll get, yeah, right. So that's exactly the point. So honestly, if I'm sitting at a Shabbos table, if I say lichvod Shabbos Kodesh on every bite, I'm lying. if you say it once to yourself quietly on the first piece of gefilte fish, just watch out, Scottish, eat the fish, then go to town, then go to work on the meal. Right? Don't what do you go? We're not, unless you're the Vilna Gaon, and I don't know it. I haven't noticed it yet. Like the Vilna Gaon used to sleep 2 hours out of every 24. Right? Some people sleep 22 hours out of every 24. So I'm not quite sure if you're yet the Vilna Gaon or not. So a person has to know now, what's the test? What is the test? How much, okay, I'm going to have my dessert, but I'm not going to have a second piece of dessert. That I think I can handle. What's the test? You know what the test is? What happens later? Are you still, when you sit down and you start learning again later on Shabbos afternoon, are you sitting down and you say, Amar Rava, or you look at Amar chocolate cake? You're still thinking about that piece of chocolate. Hey, you know what? You're not on the level. Go eat the chocolate cake and stop making everybody crazy, right? And if you're driving yourself and you're pushing yourself to study Torah hard, and your interpersonal relationships, you're tense with people, then you're not holding by that. You're just not holding by that. Sometimes people try to, how much sleep do you need? Like, this is always a big test. How much sleep? It's trial and error. How much sleep do you need? I think the Israeli army, after basic training, but in the Israeli army, they found that people do the best with 6 hours sleep at night. The Rambam is often misquoted. The Rambam doesn't say you have to have 8 hours sleep. The Rambam says 8 hours sleep is enough. It doesn't say you have, some people are very machmir. They fulfill the Rambam. They even use a shir chazonish on the Rambam. The Rambam says 8, so they go 12. You don't need 8 hours. You don't have to do that. But how do you know how much sleep is enough? Because, you want to, I would like to learn more and not sleep. This is something that many people in the Torah world go through, and I'd like to cut a little sleep out so I can learn another page of Gemara, so on and so forth. How are you with your family? Are you tense? Are you nervous? You got that lack of sleep buzz in your body? Then you know what? Go to sleep. Go to sleep. Don't drink another energy drink. Just go to sleep. If you're a type of person like Reb Chaim Kanievsky, who could go on about an hour and a half at night, and still be patient with all the people who are coming in and smile to everybody around you, including your family, then you're doing okay. But you have to, sometimes it's trial and error, and you're just pushing too hard. Okay? Now, further. Another 2 ideas here. I told you yesterday that Shlomo Melech, we quote the pasuk. I want you to take a look at pasuk. Where is it? Pasuk base. Okay, watch this. Watch this. Zos Chukas Torah asher tziva Hashem leibor. Daber el bnei Yisrael. No, wrong pasuk. Which pasuk is it? 1 second. Where is it? 1 second. 1 second. Where is that? You're gonna like this, Mayor. Look at pasuk. Sorry, I have to find this. Where is it? Oh boy, I can't believe I found it. All right, we'll see if I find it. Shlomo Melech said, "Amarti echkem avirechokim men." Shlomo said, "I would be wise, and I found that it was distant from me." I found that and what was he referring to? He was referring to this mitzvah. Remember, we said that yesterday. The only one who was explained the mitzvah to the nth degree was Moshe Rabbeinu. The Medrash says that Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, "To you, I'm going to reveal it, but not to anybody else." Now, what does that mean? I saw a fabulous explanation. And not only that, Moshe Rabbeinu, when he saw the burning bush, what did Moshe Rabbeinu himself do? He said, "Asurana, I will move away the eres amara godol hazeh, and I'll see this burning bush. I'll move away and I'll see it." So I saw one of the commentators, a very intriguing explanation. He says, sometimes if you look at let's say a beautiful painting, what do you have to do in order to really appreciate the painting? What do you have to do sometimes? You have to step back, right? If you're up close, it just like a jumble of color. Then you step back. So if it's modern art, it still looks like a jumble of color, right? but if it's proper art, in order to appreciate a Van Gogh or a Rembrandt, you have to take a step back, and then you could really appreciate it. Shlomo Melech says, "Amarti echkema," I thought I'd be smart. V'hi rechoka mimeni. That means sometimes you have to step back. Sometimes you're pushing and trying to go at levels that are beyond you. Person decides that he learns how to read Hebrew, and the next thing you know, he's studying Kabbalah. right? Back he's studying Kabbalah with Madonna in the what do you call it in the Kabbalah Center in Tel Aviv. The absurd of the absurdities, right? So sometimes in life you have to take a step back to appreciate it. I mean, sometimes a person is delving into areas that are really beyond their capabilities. That's not you. Gemara is fine. Gemara, what's that? But not Kabbalah. We're not ready for Kabbalah yet. Right? That's what do you call it?
Next week.
Yeah, next week is we're on to Kabbalah already. Kabbalah with Payas. Yeah, and one more point here is that that the fact that we don't understand the Para Aduma is also an overarching lesson that not everything in life has to be understood. Not only Torah. So a lot of things in life happen and we don't understand them. Right? Why did this happen? Bad things happen to good people, whatever they call it. At the end of the day, the Torah is teaching you, okay, we have a precedent over here. The same way that you don't understand this, and there's obviously God's wisdom is in it, so some things in life we don't understand. Okay, who said you have to understand everything? That person doesn't always understand everything. I told you there's a lady who a lady got sick, and she had a very healthy attitude about it, but she was a serious life-threatening illness. So people were wondering how she managed to maintain such a positive outlook. Somebody said, "Aren't you upset? Aren't you?" She said, "Look, I was always popular, and I never said to Hashem, why me? And I graduated very high in my class. I was very smart. I never said to Hashem, why me? I got married. I was one of the first girls in my class to get married with a great husband. I never said to Hashem, why me? And I had children right away. Some of my friends got married. I never said, why me? So now something unfortunate happens. I'm also not going to turn around and say, why me? People always say, why me, when something negative happens. Nobody who's won the lottery ever started crying and saying, why me? Right? Nobody ever said, well, that's a given that I deserve. I remember a guy, years ago, there's a guy, I think in Detroit, who won like $60 million. He said, and his reaction was, yeah, this is what I've been waiting for a while. This is what I've been waiting for. Somebody once said, don't complain. Don't complain when God doesn't give you what you want, because if you complain too much, He may give you what you really deserve. So, the paraduma is, I don't have to understand why. I don't understand have to ask questions. And when good things happen that I don't ask. So, everything, and down the line we'll get a better picture. Okay, let's go on. That's as far as the what do you call it? That's as far as now. What do we do with the part? Go to Pasuk Hey. Go to Pasuk. I'm still going to look for this. There's something here that's phenomenal, and I don't remember where it is. I don't remember what Pasuk it is, but I'll find it. Just give me one more second. It's worth the wait. If I could find it, it's worth the wait. Oh, there it is. Turn to Pasuk Yud Zayin. Yeah. Turn to Pasuk Yud Zayin. For 1 second. We're going to come back to Pasuk Hey. Turn to Pasuk Yud Zayin. You see where it says in Pasuk Yud Zayin, it's on page 840, 9 lines from the top. From the bottom, 9 lines from the bottom. Listen, I've had some energy drink, and so I don't know top from bottom right now. But it's 9 lines from the bottom. It says, "V'lakchu la tamei me afar sreifas achatas." They should take for the tamei person, for the dirt, for the ashes of the burning of the chatas. We're going to explain the process in a second. We didn't speak about the process at all. But over here it says they should take for the tamei person from the ashes of the burning of the chatas. So I told you that Shlomo HaMelech didn't understand it, but Moshe Rabbeinu, the Medrash says, did. Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, to you I'm going to explain, but not to anybody else. Take a look at the pasuk over here. Look at the first letter of the word La Tameh. You see, the first letter of the word La Tameh is a Lamed. The first letter of Me'afar is a Mem. The first letter of Sreifas is a Shin. Sin, same thing. And the first letter of Hachatos is a Hey, which if you read it straight spells Limoshe. To Moshe, Hashem explained it. But if you jumble the letters up around, what does it spell? Shlomo. That means to Shlomo, it was not clear. But Limoshe, he got it straight. That's what the Mepharshim say. Right? It's an accident. Another one of the coincidences in Torah, right? Now, take a look back at Pasuk Hey. Amazing how many coincidences there are. Take a look at Pasuk Hey. So what do? V'saraf es hapara la'enav, es orav es b'sarav es damav al pirshe yisov. They burn this cow, and then they take eitz erez, ve'ezov, shnito las, these various materials, and they throw it in. And then what do? They mix it with on pasuk. Where's the Mayim Chaim? Where does it say the what do you call it? Where does it first introduce the Mayim Chaim?
Chapter 20.
Which pasuk? No. Where does it? 16. Pasuk 16. Oh, good. Where?
It's in 17.
Oh, very good. V'lakchul atami. We're going to skip around a little. V'lakchul, back to that same pasuk. V'lakchul atami afar seifas aparav v'nasan of Mayim Chaim el Keli. What is going on here? You burn the cow, you turn it into ashes, and then you mix it with water, and then you use Mayim Chaim, which is water that comes from a spring, and then you sprinkle it on the guy. Now he's tahor. Now the guy is tahor. What's going on here? The answer is a cow represents the ultimate physical act is eating. That's our ultimate physical act as human being, is eating. And the ultimate physical food is meat. Right? You wouldn't say the ultimate physical Brussels sprouts. No. The ultimate, and by the way, not sushi either. Right? The ultimate physical act. Yeah, the ultimate physical act. I don't know what you're laughing at, Blake. It's sad. It's not funny. It's sad. The world used to be decent. The world was decent at one point. There was no rap in the world. People didn't. There was no sushi in the world. Right? The White Sox hadn't won a World Series. The world used to be a decent place. Things changed. I don't know. You guys are living in a pathetic world over here.
But then the Cubs won, so it
got much better. So it says, you take the ultimate physicality, which is a red cow, you burn it up. That means a person who's immersed in the physical world, that's the ultimate form of tumah. The death that creates tumah, that's just an example of tumah. That's one type of tumah. The tumah that we are susceptible to more than being around dead bodies, we're much more susceptible to the tumah of the physical world. So what do you do with that physical world? You burn it up. You turn it into ashes. A red cow, and it's a perfect red cow. Person's got the ultimate in physical. A beautiful, perfect, beautiful red cow. It's got no flaws in it. And you burn it up, mix it with it, then you put in what's Mayim Chaim? What's Mayim Chaim? What is water? Obviously, water is Torah. Ein Mayim ela Torah. Water is Torah. You mix Torah into a person's life, and you sprinkle it on him, and that he becomes purified. Now, what's fascinating is, by the way, that there are two types of purification with water. There are two types of purification. One of them is a mikveh, a person who becomes spiritually unclean. So what does he do? You immerse in a mikveh. A woman has to immerse in a mikveh. A woman who is menstruated, in order to become permissible to her husband, she has to immerse in a mikveh. How much of her has to go into the mikveh? Or a man at the time of the Torah? Nowadays, immersing in mikveh for men is not an obligation. It's not even a mitzvah, except on Yom Kippur, Erev Yom Kippur. Erev Yom Kippur, the halacha says it's a mitzvah to immerse in the mikveh, but we don't make a bracha. A woman who immerses in a mikveh makes a bracha, because for her it's mandatory. For a man, it's the rest of the year. It's a minhag. By Hasidim, it's a prerequisite almost to everything. The Hasidim are very mikveh oriented, which is fine. That's their custom. By Litvaks, many Litvaks only go on Friday. And the only time halacha says in Shulchan Aruch that it says the Mishnah Berurah says it's a mitzvah to go is on Erev Yom Kippur. Even on Erev Rosh Hashanah, it's still a mitzvah. It's still a minhag. However, when it is mandatory, how much of a person has to be in the mikveh? The entire person. A woman who immerses, if there's one strand of hair that's floating on top of the water, then it's not considered a valid immersion. Now, when it comes to, so a person becomes purified by becoming totally immersed, and obviously the symbolism of the mikveh is, I hate to use the expression, mikveh is like being born again. It symbolizes the baby in the embryonic fluid. The baby is surrounded by water, and then he comes out of the embryonic fluid. He's surrounded by fluid. Person goes into the mikveh. They're surrounded by water. And remember, a mikveh is always associated with some sort of death or loss of potential life. There's always a loss of potential life that's associated with tuba. A woman who menstruates means she didn't become pregnant that month. A man who has a male experience, that means that it wasn't used for creating life. A person comes in contact with a dead body, a dead rodent, or whatever it is. There's always some sort of loss of life or near death, connection to death. The mikveh represents a rebirth, like a baby coming out of the womb that's coming out of the embryonic fluid. I knew we had a guy here at Ohr Somayach who was in the American Navy years ago. It's one of my earliest years in Ohr Somayach. This guy was in the Navy in a submarine, and his submarine at the time had set a record for being underwater for the longest period of time in the history of the American Navy, was about 8 months, which is a long time. And he told me that it was so tight in the submarine, they had you have bunk beds? They had three levels. And he said it was so tight that if you wanted to turn over at night from your right side, you had to get out into the aisle and get back in and turn over. There was no room to flip over in the what do you call it? He said when he wanted to get a real good night's sleep, he would go into the missile room and he'd take his pillow and blanket and just lie down on a nuclear missile. Then he could stretch out. That's what he told me. Then there was room to stretch out. Just hope that there's no war while you're there. But there's wow. I had a blast. So he told me that eventually when they came out of the submarine, they were out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and they finally they went up. And he came out of the submarine. He said he was the second guy out. He said it was like he felt like he was being born. That's what he said. He comes out of the top of a submarine. Hey, and then you look around like, where are we? you're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I'm going back down there. Now there's another type of purification, which is the red cow, and the person needs to be sprinkled. How much water has to touch him when he's sprinkled? Says the halacha, 1 drop. The Kohen sprinkles him. If the Kohen has bad aim, and 1 drop nicks his ear, as it just ticks his ear as it goes by, he's completely purified. Completely purified. So the commentaries explain there are 2 approaches to a person who's doing tshuva. There are 2 approaches. And this is what you asked before, John. Well, how do I know which is right for me? There's one approach that says, I'm ripping myself down completely, and I'm going to make a total change in my life. I'm immersing in a mikvah. I'm coming out a new person. Everything that I've had, I'm throwing away. My music and my friends and my people and my approach and my personality, everything. I'm just starting from scratch, which is usually a recipe for disaster. Right? That's only for some people, not for most. There's another form where you take one thing and you work on it a little bit at a time. That's the 1 little drop ticking the ear. Work on that, then go to the next level, and don't take on too much, and don't all of a sudden start speaking only Aramaic, right? Just take it one step at a time, and that's a healthier form of tshuva. Now take a look at pasuk Yud Daled. Pasuk Yud Beis. So the process is hu yischata bo bayom hashlishi. What do you call it? He is sprinkled on the 3rd day. Uvayom hashvi yitar. And on the 7th day he is purified. V'im lo yischata b'yom hashlishi. Everybody said page 840, 6 lines from the top. V'im lo yischata b'yom hashlishi, v'yom hashvi lo yitar. Now, you have this number 7, which constantly resurfaces. The number 7 is constantly coming up. Page 840, 6 lines from the top. So you sprinkle him on the 3rd day, then you sprinkle him on the 7th day. The number 7, which we find all the time in Judaism, you have Sukkot is 7 days, Chutzlars, it's 8 days. Every holiday is 7 days. The week is 7 days. A celebration for a couple that gets married is 7 days. 7 always represents a unit of completion. And a holiday, we complete the celebration in 7 days. 7 is a unit of completion. A person, Rahman al-San, a person who's mourning, he sits Shiva, right? He sits for 7 days, he sits Shiva. Rabbi Emanuel Feldman actually was once in a university lecturing in, what's it called in Atlanta? Emory University. He was speaking to a group. There was a non-Jewish student there, And he raises his hand. He says, Rabbi, is it true that in Judaism, when somebody dies, Jews sit in a cold room? She goes, no, why would you think that? He says, well, my mother told me that when somebody dies in Judaism, Jews sit and shiver for 7 days. he said, no, that's not. Then another kid, he documented this. He's not, and another kid said to him, Rabbi, is it true Jews don't use knives and forks when they eat? He goes, other than a tish, no, He says, no, Jews use that. Why do you think? I said, my mother said Jews eat differently than everybody else. How do you like that? Yeah, we do eat differently. We're not only that, we're supposed to eat differently, not only in what the kashrus is, but in how we eat. There was a woman in Lakewood, the wife of a Kolol guy in Lakewood. She was in a supermarket, and she saw an African American lady there, and her son reaches for a little kid, is 5 years old. He reaches for a candy bar, and she says, Andre, put that down. It's not kosher. The kid puts it down. The mother, so this woman is looking, say this avrech's wife, what we call an avrechet, and she walks over. She says, "Excuse me, can I ask you a question? Are you Jewish?" She goes, "No." She goes, "Well, why did you tell him to put it down?" Because she says, "Look, I come in here all the time, and I see all the Jewish women, and they say I say, Chaim, you put that down. It's not kosher." And he puts it down. So I figure if it works for Chaim, it'll work for my Andre. How do you like? So truth is stranger than fiction. There was this rabbi, an African American woman came up to a rabbi. She said, "Hi, you're a rabbi, right?" She said, "Yeah." She says, "Could you check my mezuzah?" A true story. She said, "Could you check my mezuzah?" He thought he didn't hear correctly. He goes, well, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Listen, I have Jewish friends, and they told me, the neighborhood's a dangerous neighborhood. They said if you put this here mezuzah on the door, so you get protection. I live by myself and I'm nervous. I put up a mezuzah, and they said that you have to check it twice in 7 years. Could you come up and check my mezuzah?" So the rabbi's very curious. I don't know if he could check a mezuzah. He goes up, and sure enough, on her front door, there's a mezuzah. So he takes a screwdriver, he unscrews it, he opens it up, and there's nothing inside. There's just a plastic cover. So he says to her, "Could I ask you, was there something inside the mezuzah when you bought it?" She goes, "Oh yeah, but I couldn't read the instructions, so I threw them away." So the what do you call it? How do you do it? Right? What do you want? There you go. There's a slap. Yeah, something like that. But these are true. These are true stories. I don't know of any halacha that a goy can't have a mezuzah. The only thing is that when Jews have moved out of neighborhoods, they've taken down mezuzahs. Because you don't leave it on your house in case they're going to deface it or something. If you're leaving another Jew moves in, you're not allowed to take them down, but take them off. But I don't know that it's forbidden. If a goy were to buy a mezuzah put up, I don't know that it's forbidden. But we'd certainly prefer not, because the chances that it's going to be treated properly with Hashem's name is probably not great. Now, so you have over here sprinkled on the third day and the seventh. So the number 7 always symbolizes 7 decades. The idea of searching for chametz on Pesach to clean it out for 7 days, meaning to try to search and eradicate the evil inclination for the 7 decades of the average lifespan. Yemesh noseinu b'hem shivim shana, our lifespan is 70 years. V'im bigvuros, and if we're very strong, shmonim shana, 80 years. But the average lifespan is said to be 70 years. I told you women outlive men. I remember women, the average women, statistically, women outlive men. Women, I think now the average lifespan for men is about 73 or 74, and for women it's 78, 77, 78, something like that. That's a fact. So the 70 over here represents the 70 years of a lifetime. 30 is when a man is at peak strength. In Pirkei Avos it says ben shloshim lekoach. At 30, a man hits peak strength. From 30 to 50. Then his strength starts to wane. So the commentaries say over here, Hu yischata bo bayom hashlishi. On the third day, when a person hits his third decade, certainly by the third decade, he should start his purification process in life. Start taking life seriously. If a person's done something wrong, he should start doing tshuva by the third decade. And if you do so, uvayom hashvi yitar. Then by the end of the 7th decade, he'll be pure. when he's ready to go to his ultimate reward, he'll be pure. V'im lo yischata b'yom hashlishi, and if he doesn't get busy in the third decade, v'yom hashvi lo yitar. Now, having said that, hold the question for a while. Having said that, it's never too late. And the Gemara in Kedushin says that a man who was a Rasha his entire life, if at the last minute he does tshuva, and he can even think tshuva, so he goes, you can't rely on it. You don't wait till there because person might not get the opportunity. Person thinks, well, I'll do tshuva tomorrow, but he might not make it to tomorrow. So he'd say, like there was once what do you call it? There was a cartoon I once saw of a guy who's holding up a sign on the first day of Elul, right? On the first day of Elul, which before Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, he's holding up a sign that says, "Repent now and beat the Yom Kippur rush." Right, so a person never knows when he's going to go. So, but the theme here is that there should be a lifetime of purification. Now, one more point, very quickly. Quick question. Quick, yeah, go ahead.
Very quick. I'm turning 30 in a month. So are these things practical? Because they might.
What's the question?
The things which are described in Chumash, the person should repent and etc.
Yes, but what's the question?
No, I wanted to know if they're practical or just theoretical.
No, it's very practical. Not only is practical, don't wait till you're 30. If you're 12, you should also do tshuva. And if you're 14, you should do tshuva. Just telling you as a symbol of when a person is at a peak, when you're really involved in the rat race. By that point, the person is often married and has kids, and start getting to work. Don't always. When a person's a teenager, we don't expect too much from him. Right, or when it's in the 20s, we expect even less. But when a person becomes 30, it's time to get moving. Okay, it's an idea. Okay, take a look at Pasuk Yudalet. Zos Torah, this is the law. Adam ki yamus ba'ol, when a man dies, kol habayel lo v'chasher ba'ol yitma shivet. Anything that's in the tent and anything that comes to the tent becomes tamei. Now it's a very strange turn of phrase. Zos HaTorah, Adam ki yamus ba'o, when a man dies in the tent. Why does it call? Why didn't it say Zos HaChok? It should still say this is the law, and tell us the laws. It calls the laws. This set of law is called Torah. The word Torah means hora'ah, like a moreh. Moreh is a teacher. Torah comes from the word hora'ah, instruction. That's what the whole Torah is. But why over here does it say it's just a strange Torah? It's a strange turn of phrase. So the Gemara darshans over here, Chazal darshans, Zos HaTorah Adam ki yamus ba'ohel. If a person expects to acquire Torah, to really master the body of literature called Torah, he's got to kill himself over it. A person's got to kill himself over it. And what does kill himself? Doesn't mean suicide. Kill himself means that he's got to devote himself and dedicate to himself with single-minded focus and devotion. That's the only way a person, anybody who's ever achieved anything in life, has dedicated themselves to it. They've worked, they've dedicated. Listen, a guy coming out of law school takes on his first job as a lawyer. How many hours a day does he work? Right? Right? And half of them say, some of them sleep in the office, right? You want to get ahead, you're going to have to put in the hours. There's going to be sacrifice. You're going to be giving up certain things. You're going to have to devote yourself to it. So you have a person like Pete Maravich, who was a famous basketball player. Pete Maravich, he said, I read his autobiography. Well, it wasn't his autobiography because he was dead already, so it was biography. But Pete Maravich said when he was 12 years old, he was playing basketball 8 hours a day. At 12 years old, he was shooting baskets. 8 hours a day. That's how you make it. That's how you make it. Without the devotion, you're not going to make it. I had a guy at Ohr Somayach, I think I told you about this, a guy at Ohr Somayach who went to university, one of the Floridas, I don't know, University of Florida. There's a girl there in the university who made the United States Olympic swim team. He told me that between the ages of 9 and 17, there were 4 days she wasn't in a pool. That's what it takes. That's what it takes. If you want to get there, and because if you don't do it, somebody else is going to be doing it. And it takes a certain amount of devotion. The tennis players, their fathers were all crazy. All the tennis players are the tennis playerettes, right? Anybody who succeeded, anybody who got anywhere, except Prince Charles, who's now King Charles and never worked a day in his life, but all other people who have gotten anywhere, it's because they've worked. Andre Agassi said he won when he was 12 years old. Andre Agassi was in a tennis tournament. He finished second, and on the way out to the car, his father took the trophy and threw it in a garbage can. He said, we didn't enter, then finish second. Oh, Andre Agassi is what he called. That's what it takes. That's what it takes. When a person's going to devote himself to Torah, a person has to be willing to sacrifice. Each person, again, at their level. We're not Rav Chaim Kanievsky, we're not the Stipler. The Stipler used to go, when the Stipler was Rav Chaim's father, when he was a Bachar in Yeshiva, is documented. He would get up Sunday morning and he would learn till Sunday night. Then he would stay up all night Sunday night learning till Monday morning. And then he would learn all day Monday. And then he would sleep 6 hours Monday night and he would start the cycle again Tuesday. So he was on a 36 hours on, 6 hours off cycle. And he became the Stipler. If we would try it, we'd make ourselves and everybody else around us crazy. Right? You have to know. But there are people, when it comes to money, people are trying to make money. You've met people like that. When it comes to making money, there's no day and there's no night. They're just constantly on the grind, because they're doing something that they feel is important. And unless you're going to do for anything that anybody ever achieved and excelled at, that means they don't, to the degree that, and if they're a little bit good, so they then devote themselves a little bit good. What's his name? The baseball player on the Phillies. On the Phillies, what's his name? Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper, when he was 4 years old, his father took 4 tennis balls and he wrote numbers on them. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then he threw him fastballs. And Brett had what's his name? Bryce. Bryce had to tell him what number was on the ball, to learn to develop his eyesight, to pick up, to learn how to what he go. Okay, so now he's making $400 million, whatever his contract was. Okay, I wish my father would have thrown tennis balls at me. So he didn't. He threw other things at me. But what do you call if you want to get there, you have to. That's what it costs. So the Chafetz Chaim has a famous story. He says there's a guy who says to his wife, listen, they have a little shop together, and he says to his wife, listen, I am cutting back my schedule in the store. Every morning, I'm going to the Beis Medrash, and I'm going to learn the entire morning. And his wife says, what if I need help in the store? You're going to have to manage on your own. Because during those 4 hours, you have to imagine I'm dead. If I was really dead, you wouldn't be able to say, hey, I need help in the store. So for those 4 hours, you have to imagine I'm not available to the world for those 4 hours. A guy cutting diamonds, a guy who's cutting an expensive diamond does not answer his phone. And he's not accessible to his wife, and he's not accessible to anybody while he's working on cutting a diamond where one false move could cost him thousands and thousands of dollars. Why? Because he's involved in something very important. A person who feels that Torah is important, right now I'm off limits. Right now I'm not accessible. And if a person devotes himself to the Torah, that's the only way that a person is going to acquire a mastery of Torah. If you ever see anybody who's a master, who's learned a tremendous amount of Torah, if they know a tremendous amount of Torah, that means they have spent time devoted to Torah. That's the only way you get there. And the same thing with anything else in life. Okay, let's go on.
How does that come from the words of the...
Because it says, Zos HaTorah, this Torah, meaning the actual Torah, Adam ki yamus baho, when you kill yourself in the tense of Torah. When a person it says by Yaakov was an ish tam yoshev aholim, he sat in the tents of Torah. When you sit and you go into the tents of Torah, then you're going to master Torah. Okay, let's go on. The very next section, page 842. Let's go on. Let's leave the Parah Adua for the time being. The Vayavo b'nei Yisrael kol ha'eda midbar tzin b'chodesh harishon. Now, first of all, realize we've just skipped 38 years. Korach was in the second year. We have the laws of the red cow, and now we go to the 40th year in the desert. 38 years we don't have that. Now, this puts a lot of things in the proper perspective. We have an idea of the Jewish people are always kvetching and complaining, and they're always rebelling, and Dasan and Avim. That was only in the first 2 years. The next 38 years, they don't hear a thing. You ask any rabbi in a shul, if he doesn't have any problems from his congregation for 38 years, he'd be thrilled. And 38 years they're in a desert. This shows you sometimes the silence is conspicuous. The fact that the Torah doesn't say anything, that's also evidence of the greatness of the generation. For 38 years, everything was fine. 38 years, nobody got swallowed up, and nobody got bit by snakes, and nobody got eaten. No, for 38 years in the desert with a family, with kids, everything else. That's the greatness of the Jewish people. Now we go to the 40th year. Now the Jewish people come to the desert, say, how many times were they come? 10 issues in 40 years, not bad. Not bad at all. Now we go to the 40th year. Vayavo b'nei Yisrael kol leida midbartzin machosh rishon. Vayeshev am b'kadesh. The people dwell in Kadesh. Vatamas sham Miriam. Vatikaver sham. Miriam dies and she's buried. Now if you take a look at the word Miriam, look at the word Miriam very carefully. Everybody see that fifth line, Miriam. Oh, say it.
Miriam.
Take out the resh, what do you get?
Yeah.
Mayim. Mayim. And the word resh means impoverished. Impoverished. When Miriam died, they became impoverished of the water. Resh, a rush, is a poor man. When Miriam died, they became impoverished of water. That means that the manna, we said the man fell in the merit of Moshe Rabbeinu. The water, the well was there in the merit of Miriam, and the clouds of glory were there in the merit of Aaron. So there's no coincidence, it's cause and effect. Because the very next pasuk says, "V'lo haya mayim la'eda." There was no water to drink, because the well, the magnificent well of Miriam, was there in her merit. Miriam dies, the well is gone, the people are thirsty, and we continue tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem.